So, Nick Wilson,
Hello, Kristjan.
I used to, when I wrote your name, I wrote it Nick Wilson, not like the Wilson from the what's the name, this movie guy character that it's his it was a brilliant, but then I realized that you have a D there.
I do. Yeah, this is it's a story of my life. I think it's people spelling my name wrong. I think this has happened all the days back when we had ThreadWatch with Nick Wilson.
Nick Wilson.
Yeah, and me and him just basically swapped identities pretty regularly.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, I think it's yeah. I'm yet to get a work badge that's been the same for for 2 consecutive quarters.
Okay.
But I think it's been pretty good. Wildson's been my favourite.
Well,
I think that sounds quite Icelandic.
Yeah, that could be, yeah. Have 2 S's in it. So it could be Wilsdon, but then you would have to remove the D there, though. But how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying the new reality of being at home. This is quite strange. It's kind of taken us back to when we all started, hasn't it?
Yeah, in a way.
We've done a big circle. So we've gone. This is how we all used to work. We used to talk to each other online. None of us knew who each other were. We all had fake names. Wasn't there Matt Cutts with Google Guy, and then I think around sort of 2004 we all realised that if we used fake made up names, nobody would ever find us to give us work.
Yeah, but that was kind of counterproductive.
Yeah.
So and what are you doing these days? What's happening?
I'm working more than ever.
Working from home.
Yeah, well, it hasn't really changed. It's been because I tend to do a lot of consultancy for brands. I guess I'm quite a corporate SEO.
Yeah.
I think Aleda said to me last week, she goes, I've always seen you as quite a kind of boring corporate SEO, which I didn't really know how to take, but that's nice. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of that.
You actually said the word boring.
I think she implied it, definitely. I think I'm not on the exciting side of the industry. Yeah, I do a lot of corporate stuff, and they've been busier than ever. I mean, absolutely manic, because they're trying to move from digital first to digital only. So this is a strategy that they had to roll out over several years, and they're deploying it in a month or 2 months. So yeah, I've been busier than ever. It's been crazy.
So what digital only? That is brilliant. So what does that mean?
Well, I think we've been around long enough to see the whole progression of this, and I think we always saw digital as something we tried to get brands to spend more on, to spend budgets on, to take more seriously. And we saw them go through this cycle of brochureware through to developing websites that converted and actually became a central part of the business. And I think that's the movement that we've had towards kind of digital first is the next stage of that, where we're saying, well, now your digital presence is the first way that people are going to interact with you, customers are going to interact with you. But then with the Corona event, we have to go digital only. There's no other option. So for companies like Vodafone, the entire store network is out of commission. There's no stores, and they have to work out how do they sell phones, how do they engage people with contracts, how do they deliver them, how do they do the logistics. It's accelerated this process massively, and I think that's what's kind of led to this idea of digital only.
So between you and I, the coronavirus has actually been a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I think it's pushed digital transformation massively. I think it's
My experience is that crisis like this one and the one with the volcano that nobody can pronounce, Eyjafjallajökull.
Well, you can pronounce it.
Yeah, and then the bank crisis is that there is something that comes out of it. If you don't get lost in it, and you are able to understand what it can do for you, then there are opportunities that people can actually work with.
Yeah, no, I think there's always opportunities in crisis like this. I mean, I started off, I launched my first agency when the .com crash happened, so this isn't kind of unknown to me. And then obviously my time in Russia was quite tricky. I think if you're going to set up a startup anywhere in the world, probably Russia is one of the places you'd be quite challenging.
So the .com happens. You're in the UK. You say, sorted. I'm just going to do something different. I'm going to go to Russia, and I'm going to start an agency. And it wasn't like you went to like Warsaw or like to like one of the big cities, like
Moscow.
Moscow. Sorry, that's Poland is the other one. And then St. Petersburg. You went like to a small city somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
or
yeah,
like a
yeah.
yeah.
By Russian terms, it was definitely small. I mean, it was 500,000 people, which is by Russian standards is not quite a village, but you know, it's definitely small.
And you have
And
no Russian at all.
no, no, not a word. Yeah, couldn't speak a single word of Russian.
So
So
how,
yeah,
so how
it was.
was like the first week?
Oh wow, yeah, the first week that was challenging. So yeah, I arrived into Moscow, and I had to find a way of getting to Ivanovo. So I found the train station, because you're talking, 350 kilometers north of Moscow. So I found a train station, nothing. I mean, they're not really set up for tourism on the trains. So you had to kind of work out the Cyrillic to work out where you were going to. And I was kind of hoping I got this right, because I could see it was going to be like 7-8 hour journey, and 7-8 hours in the wrong direction would be quite bad. And then I got on the train, and I mean, I was quite lucky in the sense that where Ivanovo is in that region is highly militarized, so that's good and bad. But so I was on a train with lots of army guys who were incredibly friendly,
Okay.
and they were just very interested in seeing an English guy and wondering why the hell I was going to that part of the world. So yeah, they made it really entertaining. We drank quite a lot of vodka. The international language of not understanding what each other's saying, and then yeah, I think I actually arrived there, fairly intoxicated, but they kind of looked after me, which was great.
That's
And
like
then
the first hours, but then you arrive
yeah,
in the city, and what happens then? Do you like an office or?
yeah, we got an office. I mean, no, first of all, I mean, I went there, I went there for love, to be honest, and that's why I
Oh,
went for
yeah,
Anna. So this is I'd known Anna for a couple of years before that, and we'd
yeah,
talked to each other online. And so at that point, it was really tricky in the UK. There
yeah,
wasn't a lot of work around post.com.
yeah.
Everyone had very small clients, and I think anyone who says they had these massive corporate clients in 2001, no one really did. SEO would just really come on the map, and yeah, you probably did. But I certainly had estate agents, very small clients, and it kind of made sense for me to go out there. So I was going out there for a holiday to see her and reassess what I wanted to do with my life. And she was fantastic. So we got on really well. So I went there for 3 weeks, looked around the city, realised that this was a huge opportunity, because the prices were very cheap. Everything was very cheap, but more importantly, there was a large number of really talented Russian programmers and developers, and the wages were very affordable. And you only had a 3-hour time difference between the UK and Russia, so it actually made it a really sensible place to set up. So I realised I had enough money to go out there, set up the company. We hired around 15 people within the first 2 months,
Hmm.
just by doubling everyone's offers on salary. So it was it's a very good place to hire. And yeah, before we knew it, we were doing work for UK clients. Because they wanted someone on the ground that they knew, who had their own team.
Hmm.
So it sort of made it a very attractive option to some of those clients.
And Anna is your wife now, and you have 2 girls.
2 girls
Oh,
and 1 boy. So yeah,
a
we've
boy.
yep, got a
Okay.
little Russian boy.
Okay. How old is he?
2.
Okay, so he's like, so that's why you didn't bring him to Iceland when you came
Yeah,
for.
yeah,
Yeah, and then you had 2. I think that both girls were quite talented drummers.
yeah. No, they really enjoyed that. I mean, apart from one of them nearly getting lost in the he got on the trip into the iceberg.
Yeah. She got lost there.
Glacier. No, she went to the glacier, didn't they? Because you told them, you were very insistent that children shouldn't go to the glacier
Yeah.
because they can get stuck in the glacier.
Yeah.
And
And
that
they
was
went.
that's very sage advice, because then she went and got stuck in the glacier, which is like,
Oh,
it was,
yeah.
so they managed to pull her leg out of
Yeah.
the glacier, but
Ignore,
she still remembers that.
ignore the advice.
Yeah.
So and so Russia, and are you still like using people there, or
No, I don't. We still got really good friends that we talked to back there, and but yeah, I kind of moved into a different sphere. I mean, when we then went from Ivanovo to Moscow, because
Hmm.
there were a lot of changes around that time. I mean, wages went up considerably in Ivanovo. I think in the time I was there, it went from $100-200 a month to $1,500
Okay.
over a very short period. So it dramatically went up. And that has a lot to do with the number of people who are available in Russia to do that work. It's a very limited supply. They don't have enough people kind of going through the university process, really.
Okay.
So we kind of went to Moscow to sort of take the next step. And we were doing lots of trips back and forth from Moscow in the car, and that's a 5-hour journey when Anna kind of put the foot down. And but you don't really want to be doing that on Russian roads on a regular basis.
So what type of, did you have like a Moskvitz or a Lada or something? What type of car was it?
No, she had a Nissan. She's really
nice.
yeah.
Fancy.
Yeah, see, fancy husband, see, in IT. So she did very. Oh, we bought. I mean, when we got that Nissan, that was crazy. We bought the Nissan in cash.
Oh.
So you go and buy a brand new car in cash, which is quite Russian.
I have a friend who he's an engineer, but he's like a multi-talented guy, and he was working in Russia, and he told me that when he came first, he had this really nice bag of tools with him, like a proper, like with all these different things, and he went in and he looked over the plant he was going to be working at, and he noticed that they were using tree branches to swipe the floor, and the tools were all makeshift, and he was like, what, why don't we have proper tools? And then they were like, this works. I'm like, why, like, use what you work. And so he brought this nice toolkit. 3 weeks later, everything had been stolen, and he was in the rush of
Yeah.
He actually could buy some of his stuff back on a market somewhere. He was just told that if he wanted back, go to that market, talk to this guy, you can get it back for X.
That's very fair. That sounds great. At least they told him where to get it back from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But how was your experience with Russia? Like you lived there. Your wife is Russian. You have ties in there. And like one of the things which I've learned is traveling around the world, speaking at conferences, is that a lot of things are tainted by news media. They're tainted by your kind of your own bias. You probably live in an echo chamber of your own bias, more or less. And then when you go there, you certainly experience that, oof, this is completely different.
Yeah.
So is Russia, like, what is Russia? Like just quickly, so we don't...
It's very different when you live there, and I lived there for 7 years, so it's quite a fair amount of time. And I think you're right, you have a lot of prejudices, and you kind of you get to understand. I mean, the Russian people are fantastic. They've kind of been a victim of circumstance over the centuries in terms of kind of political leadership. And I think but there is incredibly friendly, very warm. I found Russian people, and some of the friends we've got there, we're going to have forever. I mean, they're fantastic people. So and also in terms of IT, I mean, incredibly clever. There's some really clever Russian IT guys. We had a couple working for us in Ivanovo, and they will come up with the most unique solutions to problems. So I really enjoyed working with them.
You see this in Semrush, for example, all the people there. Like, I think I haven't met anybody who works at Semrush, which are, of course, they are from different countries and so on, but mostly Russian, and they're absolutely brilliant, super clever, very professional, super nice people. Yeah.
And the startup scene as well. I got involved with the startup scene in Moscow, and it was great because Russians are really practical when it came to their startups. So they had this mixture of technical skill, but also looking at the idea and thinking, how can this actually be applied? What's the commercial model behind it? And so it was really refreshing when you had so much of the world looking at just building numbers and building services that didn't have an obvious monetization strategy behind them. It was quite good to look at Russian projects and realize, these guys really understand what they're doing. So I like the approach that they often took on that.
So in Russia, you develop your SEO, you hone in on your SEO skills. You move back to the UK, take your wife with you. Did you have any kids at that time, or did you?
Yes, we had our eldest daughter had been born at that point, so that was quite a tricky time because I had to leave them in Russia. We'd already made our decision to come back at that point. There'd been a few things that had happened. We'd had the fires north of Moscow that was quite dramatic. You had a smog. It's a bit like you saw the Australian fires. It was very much like that. You had this smog that kind of covered the whole of Moscow, and you couldn't see further than your arm. And the Russian health service was telling you that you shouldn't go out in this for longer than an hour, or it'd be very dangerous. So we'd had there'd been a lot of terrorism around that time. I think the metro had been bombed on one of the routes I took every morning. And I think I'd already realized I wanted to come back to the UK because it seemed like a natural kind of progression. We didn't imagine ourselves living in Russia forever. so we kind of made that move, and I had to come back to the UK first on my own, and leave my wife and eldest daughter in Moscow, because you can't bring someone back into the UK. I don't think people realise this, but it's very hard in terms of immigration, and we spent years working out the immigration between both countries, and I think it was only when my wife got citizenship that kind of all ended. In terms of the UK side, which was quite a relief. So I came back here. I worked in London for a bit. I got a job with Arena Media that became part of Havas, and I got a really good opportunity there to kind of help build out their SEO proposition, and we built a fantastic team. I mean, we I think there were 2 people when I started. Ian Bowden was very instrumental there, and it was about 35 people when I finished. And then Ian kind of took over the team, so we built there was a really good team of people there. And I still keep in touch with many of those people that I managed.
It kind of was interesting, and this ties back into both what I've spoke with Bill Hunt about in previous recordings, and Dwayne Forrester yesterday, and the other one which I've spoken to, is that this industry seems to be saturated by super nice people. I literally can count it on one hand, fingers on one hand, the people I don't even want to say dislike, but just like don't want to associate myself with. And they seem to be genuinely nice, open, willing to learn, and it goes back into this understanding that we are kind of in a way inventing this industry. I think I said miniature Gutenbergs with Bill Hunt, and that is what I find most interesting, is that you can have 2 SEOs sitting side by side that are working for 2 hotels which are side by side, owned by 2 brothers, have an equally amount of rooms, and one of them might fail miserably because the approach is different. But it wouldn't mean that this wrong approach is just something else that happened. It could be technology, it could be anything, and it's just a versatile industry that I love it.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. I'm always amazed by the industry and the community. I have to admit, I mean, most of my friends are actually within the community. We're all fairly work obsessed, so you tend to catch up with people at conferences, and when I see you and everyone else, it's great. But yeah, it's amazing people. They're all super smart, really engaged, and I think that's got better every year. I think even the new generations that have come in, the old generations are kind of pioneering, but as you've seen, I mean, there is no pioneering really in SEO, because it just carries on, and what is search, discovery, all this is happening right now. So people are coming in today are pioneering. It's like we haven't finished evolving.
No, and that's the fun part of it. Yeah.
No,
so now you are living in the UK. First time we met, I think, at SES in London, maybe 2012 or 10 or something. I can't remember which date, but I still have the picture around me somewhere here that took of us when we were at the bar with the beer or something else.
You're a very big man, so you're surprisingly tall if people haven't met you in real life.
Surprisingly tall. I'm taller on the outside than I look on the inside. Nobody.
You're the TARDIS of the SEO industry.
Well, I'm actually only 190, so it's 109 centimeters. So it's not that I have, like in my family, my brother-in-law is 205, which means that he's about 15 centimeters higher than I am. And my father-in-law is about 10 centimeters higher than I am, and my father is 10 centimeters higher. So when I hug them, I hug up. Mostly I hug down, but I hug up.
This is crazy.
But it's also Icelandic, quite tall people there. But what is like? One of the things which I found interesting, and you mentioned it in the beginning, is that we are adapting to changes. This COVID thing is interesting. Is testing our durability in a way. This stuff here, for example, you and I talking, and I had a Facebook kind of gathering powwow with my greater family. My sister to my father moved to the US. There's a big family there, and we decided just to meet for coffee and cookies, virtual coffee and cookies, and talk. But that's the first time we've ever done that, so people are finding ways to communicate, but what is it that like you are seeing? Like you mentioned that digital transformation, that people are like speeding it up, and for companies who are thinking about this and wanting to kind of understand how to grab this opportunity, how to use the opportunity, because it surely is, what would be your advice there?
Yeah, I mean, at the most basic level, it's come back to what me and you know, which is evangelizing search. And I think I think people would be surprised if they haven't worked with very large enterprise clients, how often you're still evangelizing. You're still evangelizing to the senior suite of these companies, and you're trying to persuade them that, you know, SEO is something that we invest in. It's you know, it's measurable. All these basics that we kind of talk about that we assume have been done.
Yeah.
They haven't. They're still going on, and I'm often in these conversations.
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing is to examine, you know, your three main pillars, which are always going to be your pillars, which is, you know, your direct, your paid, your search, your SEO. And that for me is a huge opportunity for SEO and for search, because that's usually the pillar that hasn't been invested in historically. There's an opportunity right now to do a kind of root and branch audit across the entire site to deal with those really big problems that haven't been dealt with, to sort out the structure. I think for a long time, SEO has been something that we can kind of do as a peripheral thing. And I still see agencies working like this, because it's so difficult for them to affect change, the kind of change they need. They know what needs to happen, but they can't affect that because it involves too many stakeholders, it involves dev teams, different people who own it. So they often kind of work around the edges, and they're doing audits that people can't really action. They're doing, you know, links or disavow work, you know, that is very peripheral. It's not really dealing with the big problems that we have in SEO.
And this came up with when we and Bill were talking, is that the terminology also. I consciously moved to. So I've been working in Norway now. I became a partner in a creative agency here, and I saw this a bit in the UK when I was working there in a creative agency. That my terminology was basically useless. I had to find a way to talk in a manner that I wasn't even talking about SEO, search engine optimization. Who gives, like, I had to talk linguistics or terminology that marketing people get, because there's this twilight zone between marketing and technology, and how do you communicate that? And then also SEO tends to have kind of this tail, where the impact of the work that you do might happen in 3 to 6 months, or hopefully it happens sooner, but could take some time to actually materialize. And then you're in another budget section of that particular year. So you moved from one quarter to another quarter, and you're impacting the quarter that did not pay for it.
Yeah.
So these different things are interesting.
No, you're right, and it's a lot of it is about language, and some of the most useful things that I've had has been exposure to the wider marketing sphere. I spent a lot of time at Dentsu with the Cara guys, and there's a fantastic team at Cara. And you get to spend time with actual, you know, creatives, and you realize how this all works, how they create the proposition, how they align to the brand, and then you can come in from a digital perspective and say, well, this is what I would do in digital to help these campaigns. So it's that wider knowledge is essential. And I got a lot of this exposure at some of my clients in the last 6 years, because I've spent time with the management consultancies, and you know, the Accentures, McKinseys, you know, these kind of brands, and these are people that most SEOs don't get to engage with particularly, because they kind of operate in a different layer really to marketing. And say that politely, but yeah, there's a different layer, and they're affecting change at that high level, but SEOs aren't used to that kind of language, aren't used to that wholesale sort of transformational change that they need to affect to make these things work. And that comes down to something as simple as like, say, the measurement. You know, measurement is absolutely key. How can you SEO is usually the last person at that discussion to get attribution, fair attribution for the sales within a business. You know, paid will have a very strong voice in that. You know, even social has a relatively strong voice in that. But you know, SEO often doesn't get invited to those discussions. So the first thing is proper attribution and measurement, which has been around for quite some time now. The second thing which you referenced was the length of time it takes to do SEO, and the way that I've always addressed that is to look at it more like the management consultancies, to actually deploy SEO. So you package up the activities you want to do, and you have set timeframes for deploying those across a business, and then you agree timescales, milestones, what needs to be signed off, what needs to happen before it gets deployed in the first place. So you clear all the obstacles that you're going to get for doing that kind of level of SEO. But you actually have to kind of deploy it in the same way as the consultancies. So you're actually deploying change. The agencies that I see that go wrong are thinking about SEO as an ongoing service. And they don't have the buy-in from senior people to affect the change that they really want to do. So they just won't get to do, for example, big structural changes. Being mobile first, sorting out the mobile website. These are large changes.
And in your case, I mean, back in 2000 something, you would go to a meeting and like I remember I was at a bank and I was supposed to meet with the marketing team, and we had this really nice kind of office, like a what would you call it, a board, massive meeting room with leather seats and stuff, and I sat there alone. And 4 people walk in, and they're like all people from the marketing team of the bank, and then we start talking, and I started talking about SEO. And then the chief marketing officer stands up and says, "Well, we need to bring in the IT people. This is something with
an IT thing.
It's an IT thing. It's not marketing." And I'm like, "Well, it is." And it goes into what Bill Hunt said again. So referencing that recording is that when he was doing his stuff and he had been told that the company he was working for had been told it would cost $350,000 to fix it, and he said, actually it costs $15,000 or whatever. It's like a minimum amount of money. And then he said something interesting, which I don't think many people will catch if they listen to it, is that even if it would have cost $350,000, it would have saved $35 million a year in revenue. So are you willing to sacrifice the $350,000 as a cost to fix something? And that's another thing, is that people tend to look at the cost more than the outcome.
Yeah. It's and that's SEO's always suffered with that. It's SEO has always been the channel with the highest ROI by far. I mean, nothing comes close to it, and fixing that channel has always delivered massively for clients. And there's certainly at that sort of enterprise level, there's a lot that you can do on SEO for those brands. But it's usually about getting that signed off. But you're right. The relative cost of doing SEO is very little, and every time I sort of look at one of these big structural problems and we cost it out, we get it fixed, it pays for itself so many times over.
Yeah. And is that I'm just thinking about the way that the approach to this. So let's say today, and you mentioned that you gave a couple of tips there, but for like companies today, if they want to move into digital only, take it seriously. There needs to be a buy-in from the top level. There needs to be an understanding of the missed opportunities that companies are just basically losing out on when it comes to this. What is it like? Still in 2020, this is a dialogue we are having between us, and this is a dialogue which is really difficult to take with marketing people. Maybe it's not sexy enough or something.
It's not sexy, but the opportunity is now because of the corona situation, because they can see that the cost opportunity, what they're losing now, they can see that. I mean, their businesses may go under now. So it's never been an easier time to make that case for improving digital sales, and I think that's where the opportunity exists, right now. Yeah, I mean, there shouldn't be as much resistance because it's the only way to operate right now. But yeah, I think the language isn't sexy enough, and I think a lot of people in our industry don't have enough of a grip of commercial metrics. So the language that the C-suite are using, the commercial metrics that mean something to them, and then being able to frame the SEO work that they want to do in those terms to get them to buy into it. That's something that still doesn't really happen. And we're super clever, and this is a problem that often we can be too clever. So we'll come to a very senior level and we'll start talking about schema or how we can fix the mobile architecture, and you're right, then the next thing that happens, you go, oh, let's call in the IT team. This is clearly not for me.
Would that be the curse of knowledge?
it's a curse of knowledge, absolutely, and it's the skill as you get older in this industry is being able to simplify really important things in a way that you can get buy-in on them, and I think that's what senior SEOs seem to learn at some point.
Well, I still haven't learned it, and I think one of my biggest Achilles heel is that I look at those things as so simple things that I don't even write briefs sometimes. I just go in and start to do changes, and then just kind of implement it, and nobody knows what I did.
And I've done that. That's terrible. No, that's the worst thing.
I know it's the worst thing. No documentation on anything. It's just like, because you know it so well. It's like you've done it so often now. It basically just kind of, it feels natural, and you think that everybody should understand it.
Yeah, but you don't get the credit for it then. And I've done this on projects where we fixed huge amounts of the website with the team, but it's never been reported upwards correctly. So all that kind of low hanging opportunity that we fixed, we did it, we got it working, we had a massive upswing on the performance metrics, but because we didn't package it up properly, we never got the credit for it, and that's a mistake that you make, is because if you haven't packaged it up and got the credit for it, when it comes to the big things, you haven't got the case studies behind you to force through the big things. You should have used that work to prove what you're doing, but people usually just get on with it, and that doesn't really work. You have to be understanding how to write up these case studies. So put the time aside after you do work to properly analyze it, get the stats, write up the case studies. Those case studies are your currency to keep making larger and larger things happen across the website.
And on that, like, if everything like within the next couple of days, I'll probably be announced as a judge on the Global Digital Excellence Awards, which are going to be something that is being launched now. A virtual awards that's going to be given out in June or July or something like that this year. And the industry itself is very, I don't know if the word is homogeneous or very helpful to itself in a way, because like like Nicky Wake and the guys in Don't Panic started these awards that came out of I think Manchester or something like that, where they saw a need to start to give credit to people who are doing tremendous work, and I think one of the things which I noticed is that being able to win awards in certs is actually sometimes really good, because you can showcase to not necessarily to the client or to the world, often to yourself, that you are actually you're able to sit down with your peers, being judged by your peers, and
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've judged a lot of Nicky Wake's and Don't Panic's awards now for maybe 5-6 years, and I think it's a really good practice to get into, of actually writing up those entries. And I think even if you weren't putting them in for awards, I mean, this can be the secondary payoff for you having this sort of best practice, is that you have a whole series of awards ready to be submitted. But you should get into that practice, and I don't think that happens enough in the industry. We don't sort of realize that each of these deployments can be measured and looked at in purely in commercial terms, in terms of the benefit for the business.
So what that would do then to help you, so it's a really good point that you're making there, so I'm going to hammer that a little bit. So even if you don't send it in, so if you when you start the project, you have to set some KPIs. What is the outcome that is going to come out of this, and so on and so on. So you start by setting a foundation for the project, and then when you're done with the project and you look at it, and did you get the outcome, or did you excel? So now that is your own self kind of scrutiny on your work, or you are reviewing your own work with your team, and in the end, that might be something worth pitching into an award. But at least you've gone through the process of reviewing your work, learning from it, and you have documentations about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it teaches you to package it properly. I mean, I used to do a lot of this quite early on in my career, where we'd come up with a certain project. You get everyone really excited about the project. We'd call it something quite fun, which always worked for some businesses. We have like Project Overlord or Project Unicorn, I think was one that my team came up with.
Operation 2022 or something.
Operation 2022. We'll come up with a really cool name. That gets you buy-in. We're talking about cool language. That gets you buy-in from the marketing department. They go, oh, this sounds fantastic. So work out the language. Yeah, we they love code names like that. So come up with a code name that resonates through your business. Package up your SEO activity. Work out how you're going to measure it, because often getting that measurement in place needs sign-off and stakeholders to agree to it. But do that before you even start doing the work. Do the measurement part first. Then deploy the work. measure it again, use this as a way of gaining traction through the business, because I had a very good manager, Ed Fletcher, who always used to use this phrase, you can't boil the ocean. And when you deal with very large corporate clients, there's so much to do, you can't possibly just get it all fixed. And so you have to take it chunk by chunk. And the best way to do that is to have this kind of packaging of your work, because every time you succeed, you get a case study. And when you can use that case study, I used to use that between different markets, because I dealt with 26 different countries. So if you want, you'd find one market who wanted to try something out. So you'd run a proof of concept, a POC. You work with them, you do it in this very measured way. You come back with the case study with the results. You then give them this content, because that helps them in their position. They have content, then they can show around their business. And then you take these case studies and you then use them with other markets, because within a large organization, they're going to look very closely at the case studies that are done between the different countries, between different units. Germany is a fantastic team, so other countries always want to know what Germany's doing. Ireland and UK, very competitive. New Zealand, Australia, always looking at each other's work. So if you can package things up in that way, you can start to build up a library of case studies that are allowing you to get more and more traction on rolling out these deployments across the organization. So it's a really useful way of kind of chipping away at large scale SEO.
So in the award pitches now that are coming in, are you seeing a change? Are you seeing higher quality? Are you seeing
it constantly gets better. I think slowly, and things people get right is that they look at the objectives a bit more carefully. And I think all of the judges, you'll know this, we get very annoyed when we see the objective is to increase organic search. Well, yeah, of course, that's like, what are you doing? I kind of hope that was your objective as the SEO team. But these are very woolly measurements. They're not going to impress anybody. If you can then really tie that down to really clear metrics and come back with a case. And I think another thing you said about the curse of knowledge, I think the other thing that happens within SEO is the curse of having to be absolutely right. And I think this is where we always say, like, it depends, because there are so many different variables. And I think SEOs are inherently quite nervous about putting some of these numbers or these models that they've come up with to their projects, where other disciplines, other marketing disciplines, will just create a model. And they'll say, well, I'm creating this model because I've got, this, I'm assuming A, B, C, I'm using my knowledge to know that this is, and they build a model. And I think SEOs really struggle with that, because we want absolutely precise knowledge. And sometimes you haven't got that. So your first attempt has to be, an attempt. And then as it gets better, and as you look back on that case study, you can then start to refine that and get those metrics better. So don't let perfection be the enemy of getting it done. That's kind of what I'm saying. You can sometimes kind of, it can be a journey that you go on.
Yeah, sometimes good enough is perfect.
Yeah, good enough is perfect. Yeah, because it gets it signed off in the first place. And so the other team would have come in and said, we're going to increase organic traffic. And the senior head of marketing would have gone, well, that's what I'm paying you for. And the other team would have come in and said, well, we've looked at this very carefully, and we're pretty sure we can get a 15% increase in growth year on year. Who are you going to go with? Who are you going to allocate budget to? And this is something else that happens with SEO, is that we sometimes think that we're the only people making those recommendations. We're not. If you're a head of marketing, you have people coming to you from every direction. You have people offering, you can spend your money on new product, you can spend it on new copy, you can buy some advertising. You have so many different options. And SEOs can sometimes assume that, their list of audit items are the only things in front of them. So they have to realize that they have to kind of get that attention from the head of marketing. So they need to be able to work out how to talk in their commercial language. And that often means kind of coming up with these models that they understand.
So from a digital-only point of view, if you were a marketing manager and you were building a strategy, how would you, what would be the top 5 list of channels or process that would you SEO be on it?
Yeah, and opportunities. I think there's, I've been doing a bit of work on this recently. There's some good things that have happened. Well, some good things, some opportunities. I think, obviously companies, expanding your distribution is really important, and companies and markets where Amazon is really strong right now, you can see that they're ramping up their capacity massively. And so they're a lot of people now are learning how to shop through Amazon. and that behavior is probably going to be permanent to some level. So, are you a company who might want to start setting up your own shop on Amazon and start to use that platform better? Are people already selling your products on Amazon? Do you need to go on there and defend your brand? Do you need to establish yourself in that marketplace? Because Amazon has now increased in importance because of its role in distribution and getting your products to your customer base. So, is that an opportunity? Other things are communicating with your audience base. How are you talking to them? How is your there's been a real push to chatbots and other solutions like this, and chatbots are fantastic, and I think that's where the future is. But as we know, a lot of the content that's in chatbots isn't available in search. So it's generated within the interaction, within the engagement with the customer. So how are you putting your content onto your site to actually get that into search is a big question. I think Yext at the moment are offering a 90 days free for their for their answer system. I think it's nowwronganswers.com is the address. But you can go there.
We went through this yesterday with. It was actually quite interesting, and the way that granularity is now kind of like the deep dive into granularity. The company that can answer the question best is the one that wins.
It's going to get that space, and I think looking at how you answer those kind of queries in Google, how you understand what's in the people also asked, how you understand what questions people are asking is a really good thing to do right now. But yeah, the X product is fantastic, and considering that's free, I'd be recommending that for the next 90 days. There's a lot of opportunities in terms of store management because the stores are all out of action right now, and I think it's a good time to think about how are we managing that kind of traffic. Are there is this a good time, for example, to be running some digital training for your store managers who are all sat at home, not knowing what to do? So is it a time where you can kind of roll out a more scalable management system for your stores and get that so you can direct the traffic? And I think Google's been making opportunities available within those systems on the API, so you can start to talk to your customer base at scale through all of your stores and start to use that properly as a communication channel. And then when it does come back online, you can have stronger stores, you can have a stronger store presence to come out of this.
And I think that's like what I've seen also is that you take hotels, for example, which sadly now maybe are not anymore, but the hotels that seem to be doing best are the ones that seem to have the most digital savvy staff, for example. And it goes into stores, retail, and now you have all these point of sales or sales systems, and you got the ERP systems that are connected to it. There's a massive amount of data which is flowing between the stores and the kind of the core database, which can be used to build up more knowledge, and then that can be injected into different systems to throw out information. And this is underutilized opportunities.
Yeah, no, massively. And I'm seeing that. I mean, first party data, using it for search is I love it when people do that. When they talk to their sales teams, when they talk to their support teams, and they work out what people actually want from the business. I'm fascinated by that. And I think we need to get a lot better at having a wider understanding of the data points that we can use for SEO.
Talking about first party data, what do you think about Google releasing the cookie in 2 years?
Certainly. I mean, sounds like it's going to make the paid people a bit happier. I think it's I've kind of always kind of sidestepped all of that because we don't really have that data. But I mean, from a search perspective, I'm always trying to do more with the basics rather than that. I think I was quite happy that AMP and Adobe seem to have come to a new agreement, which is great. So it's going to be a first-party cookie that will allow you to track the user between the AMP landing page and your own domain, which should be, hopefully we'll deal with some of those issues. But it
remains to be seen. So brilliant, Nick. Love talking to you as always. And I'm gonna think about just like this one final question. We've kind of addressed what people can do. You're in the UK now. 2-year-old son, which I haven't seen.
I'll have to show you the little he's a little Russian boy.
The rascal. And you're maintaining your Russian, of course, because you're still in there.
Конечно. I'm running Russian lessons with the kids.
You are.
So I do that because they like learning with me because I think it's less intimidating than learning with my wife. So weirdly, I run the Russian lessons in the house, which they're fascinated about. Other than that, I've been perfecting my lock picking skills.
Why? Why?
Yeah. So I've been Wait,
hold on. Why?
Why?
Yeah.
We need some practical skills come the apocalypse. So
okay.
you can have zombies chasing you, Kristjan. How are you going to get into
that
locked garage?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
You
So
haven't
they
thought
can
this through.
pick the lock and then they eat me and you're inside.
Yeah, that's it. I would let you in, obviously, but this is really satisfying hobby. Actually, someone else showed me this.
Yeah.
And you kind of get into them. You have your basic lock. You have your house lock. Then you just they're like little puzzles, basically.
Yeah. I'm going to look into that. So Dwayne Forrester, he got me hooked on, or not hooked on, but he wanted me to build my own guitar. So I bought a kit, bought a guitar kit, and I'm trying to get that together. And then now you're pushing me to locks. I'm going to look into that.
I'll send you the link to these. I'll definitely recommend it for you. It's it's really satisfying. The first one you pop, it kind of pops and opens, and you're like, yes. And then you can do it when you start doing it under 10 seconds. You're going like, this is great. And I'd say it's very, very satisfying hobby.
Apocalyptic. I can so if in the middle of apocalypse you go like, okay, is there a doctor in the house? Yeah, come on here. Is there anybody that can pick locks? Okay, yes, come on here. Everybody else, sorry suckers, stay out.
Well, that's good. I had a feeling SEO wasn't going to come high on that list, but
it's going to be after doctor. And another hobby was I've never been a Macintosh fan. I've always been. I'm a PC guy. And I used to be a grease monkey, so I basically was putting computers together way back.
Yeah, same.
Just loved the way that I could change things and see how they work, and specifically if the drivers weren't compatible, was I able to hack that somehow. But then now my daughters all want Macintosh, and I don't want to buy them new ones because they're so expensive. But I realized I had a couple of them at home, actually 4 of them which were not functioning. So now I've been building 2 out of the 4. And they're a little bit less accessible than the PC ones. They're a little bit more tighty and smaller thingies, all the ports and stuff like that. But that's my latest. And now I'm actually here.
I built one laptop once. It was really fiddly. You have these little ribbons, don't you? You're trying to force these little ribbons in.
Yeah, this is my latest. Now I'm putting this one together. So
it's good.
It's an Air. It's working fine. The keyboard seems to be teasing me a little bit because I took it from another computer. So not all the keys are working. And I'm figuring
challenge for your daughters.
I'm figuring it out. Yeah, exactly. But brilliant. Thank you, Nick. It's absolutely brilliant. And send me the link to the.
I'm going to send you a link. I'm going to send you a link to your starter lock set.
Yeah.
And then we can have a challenge online so you can undo them quicker.
Yeah, and I'll share it with the 25 people that watch this video.
We'll put our affiliate links in for Amazon, and we'll try and push all that. I think this is something that SEOs love. This kind of thing. This is like lock picking is a perfect SEO activity.
Yeah.
It's problem solving, and I think it's the kind of thing.
I do this a lot.
Oh yeah, I've got one of those. Yeah. No, you'll exchange that in a second for this. I'm on conference calls and I'm just picking locks without looking at it.
Okay.
So yeah, I think you'll actually quite like this. So yeah, I will share the links with you.
Sure. Say hi to the family. How would they say goodbye in Russian?
Vidimsia, poka.
Vidimsia, poka.
We'll see each other again. Vidimsia.
Vidimsia.
Yep, vidimsia. Thank you, Kristjan.
Bye bye.